Alexandria knife sharpening and laser engraving. So I want to do a quick thing on, let's talk handles. I've recently made a change to my website pricing and practices. I've always tried to keep things fairly simple, like the more simple on the website for people to bring their knives in and not be overwhelmed with lots of choices and different stuff, I have found just works better. I never have used a pricing model where, a lot of sharpeners do it by the inch. I have never done that. I've always been a flat fee for basically types of tools and knives, but in general, like I sharpen knives. My current fee is $13, and that just about covers all the normal stuff. What I have added to that, I used to charge separately for cleanups and polishing and different things, and now I'm just including that as part of my base price. So it basically says I'm not charging for every little individual correction. I'm not charging for minor chips, bolster reductions, the normal stuff that we do to a knife, and it's working out just fine. I'll show you on my site. It says like every knife gets a basic cleanup, polish, and sharpening for that price. So the one thing I have to do when I, assessing everything is handles. And these handles were a perfect example of it. A lot of times I will go right to a buffing bar that's designed for wood and plastic handles. And I've shown these before. I have two that I really like, that I use a lot. But sometimes you'll get something, and this knife was a perfect example of it. I buffed this wood out, and this is older. You can tell this is an older knife. It's a very nice cordon bleu carbon steel chef's knife, Japanese steel. But the handle, it was getting what we call delaminating a little bit, like it's separating. And there were parts, like it wasn't really, really bad, but it was enough that when I buffed it, it just didn't look great. It didn't look the way I wanted it to, where, like I can guarantee I can buff this shoon on there and it's going to look great. There's no, I can just tell from the looks of this will buff fine. It doesn't need anything extra. But sometimes you'll see older wood like this, and if you see little splits and cracks, this is the kind of thing you might want to treat with a hardening oil. I did this with a hardening oil overnight, and it just looks so much better. Few marks on this, but not bad. I mostly just see some oxidation. It's a very nice fine grain pattern on this, and cleans up pretty nice. There is some scratches there that won't come out that are pretty deep, but that's okay. Like I said, this is just a quick cleanup so that their knife comes back to them looking nicer than it came in. This is not meant to be some full refurbish. Okay, that's good enough. So I wanted to show you what it looked like when this happened. So you can see a lot of white on this knife. So it's pretty dry. And a lot of times when you're using a good wood buffing compound, what happens is the speed of the buffer will kind of melt the compound, and it goes into the wood, and it just reshines everything. And a lot of times you'll see those little white areas fill in, but you can see what's going on here. They're just getting dirty and kind of black. A lot of times the old finish starts coming off. So you see I'm adding a little more compound there, but it's just not looking good. It's not looking how it should. It's just getting just black and dirty. What I decided to do was that this really needed to be treated with a hardening oil, and then you can, after you've done that, you can go back and treat it with a compounding bar later, which will give it a really nice polish. But I just wasn't happy with how this was filling in. You can see it's getting darker, and some of those spots are filling in. It's getting into the wood, but in general, by the time I was done, I wasn't happy. So what I did was I went to my next step, which was to remove that polish and any of the black that was left on there. This one, I can tell from how dry it looks, might benefit from some linseed oil or something like that. I'm going to touch the metal up real quick, and then we'll sharpen and finish this. This is just to even it out and give it a really nice finished look. But like I said, I always do, I don't want to say always, but I try to do the polishing first, because you run the risk of accidentally dulling the knife anytime you're polishing. Alright, so now I'm going to do the cleanup on this again. I am going to use a little bit of goof off on the wood here, only because I noticed the polishing was leaving a lot of black. Sometimes when wood handles have been used a lot, there is a lot of like just stuff that makes black marks. And if you see that after polishing, sometimes it's just best to remove any of that polish, which you can see the wood's starting to look a lot nicer. I'm taking any of that black polish off. And what I'll probably do is I will hit this with some type of hardening oil, either linseed, Danish oil. I think it's just a little too dry for bar polishing. That usually works, but on older stuff that's starting to get a little more dry, sometimes you're better off going with a linseed oil or a Danish oil or something like that. But you can see it still looks great. So that did polish up pretty well, but I probably will hit that with a hardening oil. But let's do the sharpening now. So I've really been growing into loving this 2x42 for the initial corrections. If you notice on this knife, at the last 4 inches before the handle, it's a little uneven down there. And the 2x42, because of the long belt and the size, you can see right there, I'm just working at correcting that end part right there, just by hitting it a little extra. A lot of times when people sharpen some at home, especially if they have little pull-through sharpeners and stuff, you'll see very uneven, like that last 4 inches right there. And the 2x42 does a very nice job of kind of re-straightening out that bevel. That, you know, you can definitely do it with a 1x30, but it is one thing that I have noticed that 2x42 really excels at. All the chips and stuff are out. One downside of that machine, one is the noise. You can hear how much louder that is. One thing I love about 1x30s is how quiet they are. You can see this is significantly quieter. This is a newer belt. When they're brand new, you tend to get a lot of that dust. There we go. Now it feels good. I could tell from that last pass it just needed a little bit more. And the A16, I'm usually 2 or 3 strokes at most. Not a whole lot at the A16. That's why these belts last me in my progression a little bit longer. All right, let's do a cut test. There's some U-line catalog. First, I want to see if it's pushing beautifully. Then we're going to check slicing. So the difference, pushing is telling me that it's extremely sharp. So a knife that will push cut through paper, you know it is very, very sharp. The slice cut's important too, though, because the slice cut is going to tell me if there's chips. So if there's a chip that I missed in this knife, I'll feel it on the slice. So that's why you see me a lot of times. I do push cuts in multiple spots to see if it's push cutting through the length of that knife, but then I do a slice cut, and that's checking for any chips. And that's just a little insider tip there on why I do my paper cut the specific way I'm doing. I'm actually looking for two specific things. One is level of sharpness, which I know if it's push cutting pretty much across this whole blade without slicing, and then the slice cut is just to look for any chips that I may not have seen that I didn't get out. So in wrapping up this video, my point was basically just to get you to see that a lot of times you'll go in with a plan and, you know, a routine that you start going down, and something's going to throw it off, which in this case it was that handle, you know. So it did not buff out the way I wanted it to, but rather than, you know, let that destroy everything, I went on with the rest of the sharpening. I went back, I finished that knife, sharpened it, then I just simply took that buffing compound off, removed it, and then treated that knife with Danish oil, let that dry overnight, and the next day it was beautiful and ready to go. You know, just be prepared for that, because that's the way sharpening goes. There's always, you know, you're gonna run into unexpected things that happen, and you just kind of roll with it and keep going. So that's it for today. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe to the channel. I will leave a link to my master link of links that is off of my website. That is the majority of the products that I use, and I will put some links in the description here too to things that I think you guys might be interested that you saw in this particular video. And have a great day, everybody.